On a bright spring morning in a quiet town in southern England, people hurried along the pavement with coffee cups in their hands. Parents walked children to school, buses arrived exactly on time, and shopkeepers raised their shutters for another ordinary day. For everyone else, it looked like just another Tuesday. But for 10-year-old Emily Carter, it would become the most important day of her life. Emily lived in a small brick house with her grandfather, Arthur Carter. Arthur was 74 years old. His silver hair was always neatly combed. He wore the same brown jacket nearly every day because it reminded him of happier years. Although he smiled often, age had slowed him down. His knees hurt whenever he climbed stairs. His hands shook slightly whenever he poured tea, yet he never complained. Emily believed he was the strongest man in the world. Every morning they shared breakfast together before school. Arthur carefully toasted 2 slices of bread, while Emily spread strawberry jam across hers. She always laughed when he accidentally burned one piece. "Granddad," she giggled, "you've made another black toast." Arthur smiled. "I call that extra crispy." Emily laughed even harder. Those tiny moments meant everything to them. Emily had lived with Arthur ever since she was 4 years old. Life had not always been easy, but Arthur made sure she never felt alone. He packed her lunch every day. He attended every school event. He never missed a parents' meeting, even though everyone else called it Parents' Evening. To Emily, he was both grandfather and father. After breakfast, they walked together toward the local primary school. The streets were full of friendly neighbors. Mrs. Dawson watered flowers outside her cottage. A postman waved as he cycled past. A baker placed fresh loaves in the shop window. Everyone knew Arthur. Everyone respected him. But very few people truly knew his struggles. As they reached the school gate, Emily hugged him tightly. "I'll see you this afternoon." Arthur smiled. "I'll be waiting exactly where I always am." Emily nodded. "You never forget." "I never could." She skipped through the school gates. Arthur watched until she disappeared inside the building. Only then did his smile slowly fade. He reached into his jacket pocket. Inside was another letter. White envelope. Official stamp. He stared at it for several seconds before folding it back into his pocket. Then he quietly walked away. Inside the classroom, Emily loved listening to stories. Her favorite subject was English. Her teacher, Mrs. Williams, believed stories could change people's lives. That morning, she gave the class a simple assignment. "I want each of you to write about your hero." Most children immediately began writing. Some chose football players. Others chose famous actors. One boy picked an astronaut. Emily didn't hesitate. She wrote one name. "My granddad." Mrs. Williams noticed her smile. "Tell us about him." Emily proudly stood beside her desk. "My granddad isn't famous. He doesn't have lots of money. He can't run very fast anymore. But every single day, he makes someone smile." The classroom became quiet. Emily continued. "He says being kind costs nothing. And when someone feels lonely, you don't walk away. You sit beside them." Several children smiled. Mrs. Williams felt tears forming in her eyes. "That's beautiful, Emily." Emily beamed with pride. She couldn't wait to tell Arthur after school. Meanwhile, Arthur walked across town toward a small charity shop. 3 mornings each week he volunteered there. Nobody knew he wasn't paid. He simply enjoyed helping. He organized donated books. He repaired broken picture frames. He greeted every customer with kindness. The manager, Helen Brooks, admired him greatly. "Arthur, you should really take a break." Arthur laughed softly. "If I stop moving, I'll probably fall asleep." Helen smiled. "You always say that." Arthur winked. "It keeps me young." Neither of them noticed Arthur quietly rubbing his chest when Helen turned away. Around lunchtime, Arthur left the shop. Instead of going home, he walked toward the local bank. His steps were slower than usual. Inside the bank, customers waited patiently. A young advisor called Oliver invited Arthur into his office. "Good afternoon, Mr. Carter." Arthur forced a smile. "Good afternoon." Oliver opened a file. "I've checked everything again. I'm afraid nothing has changed." Arthur looked down. "I understand." Oliver hesitated. "I truly wish there was another option. Arthur simply nodded. He thanked Oliver politely. Then he stood and quietly left the building. Outside, he sat alone on a nearby bench. For several minutes, he simply watched pigeons walking across the square, his eyes filled with worry. Not because of himself, because of Emily. That afternoon school finally ended. Children poured through the gates. Parents waved excitedly. Cars lined the road. And exactly where he always stood, Arthur waited with a warm smile. Emily ran straight into his arms. "You came." Arthur laughed. "I told you I always would." She grabbed his hand. "I've got something amazing to show you." They walked slowly toward home. Emily proudly handed him her school notebook. Arthur adjusted his glasses. He began reading. "My hero." As he continued, his eyes became wet. Every sentence described the kindness Arthur had shown throughout her life. She had even drawn a picture of them feeding ducks together. Arthur stopped walking. He hugged Emily tightly. "This is the greatest gift anyone has ever given me." Emily smiled. "It isn't finished. I'll keep adding more." Arthur whispered softly, "I hope so." When they reached home, Emily noticed something unusual. Arthur placed another unopened envelope inside a kitchen drawer. Usually he opened every letter immediately. "Granddad, why don't you read that one?" Arthur quickly smiled. "Oh, just boring paperwork." Emily accepted the answer, but something felt different, very different. The following morning was bright again. The sun shone across the neighborhood. Birds sang from garden fences. Arthur prepared breakfast exactly as usual. Burnt toast, strawberry jam, orange juice. Emily laughed. Everything seemed normal until the doorbell rang. Arthur answered. A smartly dressed woman stood outside carrying a folder. She introduced herself politely. "Good morning, Mr. Carter. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm here regarding your property." Emily couldn't hear every word, but she noticed Arthur's face lose its color. He quietly stepped outside. The conversation lasted nearly 10 minutes. When Arthur returned, he smiled, but this time it wasn't a real smile. Emily had never seen him look so frightened. She didn't ask questions. Not yet, but deep inside, she made herself a promise. Whatever was troubling her grandfather, she was going to fix it, even if nobody believed a 10-year-old girl could. She had no idea that one decision would soon shock an entire community. The next morning arrived with bright sunshine stretching across the quiet streets. Emily could not stop thinking about the woman who had visited their home. Her grandfather smiled during breakfast. He joked about burning the toast again. He even hummed an old song while washing the dishes. But Emily noticed something different. His smile disappeared every time he thought she wasn't looking. Children often notice the smallest changes. Emily certainly did. On the walk to school, Arthur squeezed her hand gently. "Have a wonderful day." Emily looked up. "Granddad, are you happy?" Arthur paused. He smiled. "I am happiest whenever I'm with you." It was a lovely answer, but it wasn't really an answer. Emily nodded anyway. She kissed his cheek before running to the school gates. Arthur watched her disappear. Then he slowly walked away. During morning lessons, Emily found it difficult to concentrate. Numbers on the whiteboard blurred together. Words in her reading book seemed to drift across the page. Mrs. Williams noticed. "Emily, would you like to answer the next question?" Emily stood. "I'm sorry. I wasn't listening." The classroom became quiet. Mrs. Williams smiled kindly. "Would you like to tell me what's worrying you?" Emily looked down. "I'm worried about my granddad." Mrs. Williams spoke gently. "Is he feeling unwell?" Emily shook her head. "I don't know. He's pretending everything is fine. But I don't think it is." Mrs. Williams understood immediately. Sometimes adults believe children notice nothing. They were wrong. At lunchtime, Emily sat alone on a bench. Usually she laughed with her friends. Today she quietly watched families walking through the nearby park. An elderly man struggled to carry 2 shopping bags. Without thinking, Emily ran over. "May I help?" The man smiled. "Thank you. You remind me of my granddaughter." Emily carried 1 bag all the way to the park gate. The man thanked her again. As she walked back toward school, one thought stayed in her mind. Helping people always made Granddad smile. Maybe helping him would begin with helping others. That afternoon, Arthur collected Emily exactly on time. She slipped her hand into his. "Can we go to the library today?" Arthur smiled. Of course. The local library was one of their favorite places. They wandered slowly between shelves filled with books. Emily loved adventure stories. Arthur preferred history. While Arthur searched for a new novel, Emily wandered toward a community notice board. Colorful posters covered every inch. Dance classes, charity walks, school fairs, volunteer opportunities. One bright yellow poster caught her eye. It read, Community Hero Day. The event invited local residents to celebrate ordinary people who made a difference. Anyone could nominate someone. The winning story would receive support from local businesses and charities. Emily's eyes widened. She whispered to herself, Granddad should win. That evening, she secretly borrowed a sheet of paper. She carefully began writing. My grandfather helps everyone. He fixes broken toys. He volunteers at the charity shop. He always shares what Lily has. He never expects anything in return. She smiled proudly. This wasn't just homework. It was the truth. The following day after school, Emily returned to the library alone for a few minutes while Arthur collected a reserved book. She approached the information desk. A friendly librarian smiled. Can I help you? Emily nodded. I'd like to nominate someone. The librarian handed her the official form. Emily carefully filled in every line. When asked why her grandfather deserved recognition, she wrote from the heart. He taught me kindness before he taught me anything else. If everyone were like my granddad, the world would be happier. The librarian quietly read the words. She looked at Emily. Your grandfather sounds very special. Emily smiled proudly. He is. Days passed. Arthur continued volunteering. He continued smiling. But Emily noticed new envelopes arriving almost every morning. Each time he placed them inside the same kitchen drawer. He never opened them while she was nearby. One afternoon, he accidentally left the drawer slightly open. Emily didn't touch anything. She simply noticed the growing pile of letters. There were far too many. Something serious was happening. Meanwhile, inside the charity shop, Helen watched Arthur repair an old wooden chair. You got magic hands. Arthur laughed. No, just patience. Helen smiled. You know, we've had several people asking specifically if you're working. They say you always brighten their day. Arthur shrugged modestly. I'm only doing what anyone should. Helen shook her head. Not everyone does. One customer overheard their conversation. A middle-aged woman stepped forward. Excuse me. I just wanted to thank you. Arthur looked surprised. Months earlier, he repaired her young son's bicycle free of charge. She had never forgotten. My son still talks about your kindness. Arthur smiled warmly. I'm glad he's enjoying the bike. The woman left. Helen looked at Arthur. You see, you've changed more lives than you realize. Arthur simply returned to repairing the chair. He never liked attention. A week later, Mrs. Williams entered Emily's classroom carrying exciting news. I've received a letter from the community hero organizers. Several children clapped excitedly. Mrs. Williams continued. One nomination stood out. Emily's heart raced. The judges would like to meet the person who wrote it. Emily's eyes became wide. Me? Mrs. Williams smiled. Yes. They said your words touched everyone. Emily could hardly believe it. That afternoon, Mrs. Williams walked Emily to the school gate. Arthur was waiting as always. Mrs. Williams handed him the letter. Congratulations. Arthur looked confused. He opened it slowly. As he read, his eyebrows lifted. Then he looked at Emily. You nominated me? Emily nodded nervously. You help everyone. I wanted everyone else to know. Arthur's eyes filled with tears. He knelt beside her. You've already given me more than enough. Emily hugged him tightly. No, you deserve this. Parents nearby quietly watched the touching moment. Several smiled. One mother discreetly wiped away a tear. The following Saturday, the town hall hosted interviews for the community hero event. The building buzzed with volunteers, local businesses, and families. Arthur almost refused to attend. "I don't belong here." Emily held his hand. "You belong more than anyone." He couldn't argue with her. Inside, a panel of judges welcomed them warmly. One judge asked Arthur a simple question. "Why do you spend so much time helping strangers?" Arthur smiled gently. "My late wife once told me something. If you can make one person's day easier, you've already had a good day yourself." The room fell silent. Another judge asked, "What do you expect in return?" Arthur answered immediately, "Nothing. Kindness isn't a business. It's a choice." Several judges exchanged glances. None of them expected such a humble answer. After the interview ended, Emily noticed someone standing quietly near the entrance. It was Oliver, the young advisor from the bank. He recognized Arthur immediately. Their eyes met. Oliver smiled politely. "Good afternoon, Mr. Carter." Arthur returned the smile. Emily looked from one to the other. "You know each other?" Arthur answered quickly, "We've met before." Oliver nodded. "Your grandfather is a remarkable man." Before leaving, Oliver looked at Arthur with concern. "Please, don't lose hope." Emily heard every word. Her heart sank. Hope for what? Arthur gently changed the subject. "Shall we get some ice cream?" Emily agreed, but questions filled her mind. On the walk home, people stopped Arthur several times. A shopkeeper thanked him for helping carry boxes months earlier. An elderly neighbor thanked him for repairing her garden fence. A teenager thanked him for encouraging him after failing an exam. Everywhere they went, someone remembered Arthur's kindness. Emily smiled proudly, yet she also noticed something else. Arthur became short of breath after only a short walk. He paused outside a bakery. "I'm just catching my breath." Emily looked worried. "Should we see a doctor?" Arthur smiled. "I'm simply getting older." But his voice sounded weaker than before. That evening, Emily sat at the kitchen table drawing another picture. This time she drew dozens of people standing around Arthur. Above them she wrote in colorful letters, "One kind person can change a whole town." Arthur quietly watched from across the room. He smiled. Then his eyes drifted toward the drawer filled with unopened letters. For a brief moment, the smile disappeared. Emily followed his gaze. She knew those letters were the reason. She just didn't know how, and she was determined to find out. What neither of them realized was that someone else had been reading Emily's nomination, someone with the power to change both of their lives forever. But that person had not yet revealed who they really were. The following Monday began with another bright, sunny morning. The streets of the town were filled with commuters heading to work. School children laughed as they crossed the zebra crossing. Delivery vans stopped outside local shops. Everything looked perfectly ordinary. Emily and Arthur finished breakfast together. Arthur accidentally burned the toast once again. Emily laughed. "You'll never learn." Arthur grinned. "I'd disappoint you if I did." For a few moments, everything felt normal. But Emily noticed Arthur quietly place another official envelope into the kitchen drawer. The pile had become much thicker. She decided she could not ignore it any longer. That afternoon, after school, Emily finally asked, "Granddad, can you please tell me what's inside those letters?" Arthur remained silent. He looked out of the kitchen window for several seconds. Finally, he pulled out a chair. "Come and sit with me." Emily climbed onto the chair beside him. Arthur slowly opened one of the envelopes. Inside was an official notice. He placed it on the table. "The house belongs to the bank now." Emily stared at him. "I don't understand." Arthur smiled sadly. "When your grandmother became ill years ago, we borrowed money to pay for her treatment. We hoped we could repay it. But life became harder. I kept making small payments. But recently, I simply couldn't keep up." Emily felt her heart sink. "So, we might lose our home?" Arthur nodded gently. "I'm afraid so." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "This is my home." Arthur held her hand. "I know, but no matter where we live, we'll still have each other." Emily shook her head. "No, I'm going to help." Arthur smiled kindly. "My brave girl, Some problems are too big for children. Emily looked directly into his eyes. You taught me that kindness can do impossible things. I'm going to believe you. The next morning, Emily arrived at school with a new determination. During assembly, Mrs. Williams announced that the community hero judges would reveal the winner at the town's spring fair on Saturday afternoon. The whole school applauded. Emily whispered quietly, "Please let it be Granddad." Later that day, Mrs. Williams found Emily sitting alone in the library. "You've been very thoughtful lately." Emily told her everything. She explained about the letters. She explained about the house. She explained how frightened she felt. Mrs. Williams listened carefully. Then she smiled. "Emily, sometimes asking for help is also an act of courage." Those words stayed with Emily. That afternoon, Emily visited the charity shop after school. Helen welcomed her warmly. "Looking for your granddad?" Emily nodded. She looked around the shop. Every customer seemed happy to see Arthur. An elderly couple thanked him for carrying furniture to their car. A young mother thanked him for fixing her son's toy train. A university student thanked him for helping him prepare for a job interview. Helen smiled. "You know, I've worked here for 12 years. I've never met anyone like your grandfather." Emily looked around the shop. Suddenly, an idea formed. A very big idea. "Miss Helen, what if everyone who Granddad helped knew he needed help?" Helen looked at Emily. She realized exactly what the little girl was thinking. "Leave that with me." The following morning, Helen made several phone calls. She contacted former customers, neighbors, volunteers, teachers, parents, the local football coach, the baker, the pharmacist, the postman. None of them knew Arthur was struggling. Every single person gave the same response. "Arthur needs help? What can we do?" Word spread across the town faster than anyone expected. Meanwhile, Oliver, the young advisor from the bank, requested another meeting with his manager. "I've reviewed Mr. Carter's file." The manager nodded. "I know." Oliver continued. "He's never ignored his responsibilities. He paid what he could for years. He's respected throughout the community." The manager remained thoughtful. Oliver placed another document on the desk. It wasn't from the bank. It was a copy of Emily's Community Hero nomination. The manager quietly read every word. When he finished, he removed his glasses. "Who wrote this?" Oliver smiled. "His 10-year-old granddaughter." The manager looked out of the office window. Then he said something unexpected. "Invite Mr. Carter back." Saturday finally arrived. Bright sunshine filled the town square. Colorful stalls lined the streets. Children enjoyed face painting. Musicians played cheerful songs. Families gathered around the stage for the community hero ceremony. Emily stood beside Arthur. He looked uncomfortable. "I don't deserve all this attention." Emily squeezed his hand. "Yes, you do." The mayor stepped onto stage. "Today, we celebrate ordinary people. People who quietly make life better for everyone around them." He opened an envelope. "This year's community hero is Arthur Carter." The crowd erupted into applause. People stood to their feet. Many were cheering. Some were crying. Arthur looked completely stunned. Emily hugged him as tightly as she could. "I knew it." Arthur slowly walked onto stage. The applause continued for almost a full minute. The mayor smiled. "Arthur, before you say anything, there are a few people who wish to speak." Helen stepped forward first. "You've helped this town for years. You never asked for recognition. But today, we're giving it anyway." Next came Mrs. Williams. She held up Emily's school essay. "I've taught hundreds of children. I've never read words more honest than these." Finally, Oliver walked onto the stage. The crowd became quiet. Arthur looked confused. Oliver smiled warmly. "Mr. Carter, I wasn't invited here as a bank advisor. I came as someone who believes kindness deserves another chance." He looked toward the audience. "Our bank reviewed your case. We discovered something important. The value of a person cannot always be measured by numbers." The crowd listened silently. Oliver continued. "The bank has approved a new long-term repayment plan with payments you can comfortably afford. And," he smiled at Emily, All penalties and additional charges have been removed. Arthur could hardly speak. His eyes filled with tears. You mean we can stay? Oliver nodded. Yes, this is still your home. The entire square burst into applause once again. Emily threw her arms around her grandfather. People around them wiped tears from their eyes. But the biggest surprise had not yet arrived. The mayor raised his hand. One more announcement. The community hero judges were so deeply moved by Emily's nomination that they created a brand new annual award. He smiled toward Emily. It will be called the Emily Carter Kindness Award. Every year, it will honor a young person who changes lives through compassion. Emily covered her mouth in shock. I didn't do anything special. Mrs. Williams smiled. You reminded adults how powerful kindness really is. News of the ceremony spread across the county. Local newspapers published Arthur's story. The charity shop received hundreds of new donations. More volunteers signed up than ever before. The library started a weekly kindness club for children. Schools introduced kindness days. Neighbors began checking on elderly residents more often. One little girl's decision had inspired an entire community. That evening, Arthur and Emily walked home together. The same small brick house looked different somehow, not because it had changed, but because they appreciated it more than ever. Arthur unlocked the front door. He looked around the familiar living room. Then he turned toward Emily. You saved me. Emily shook her head. No, you spent years saving everyone else. They simply decided it was your turn. Arthur smiled. For the first time in many months, it was a smile without worry, a smile without fear, a smile filled only with hope. Emily reached for the kitchen drawer. Together, they removed every unopened envelope. Arthur quietly placed them into the recycling bin. He closed the drawer. He would never need to fear those letters again. As the warm afternoon sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, Emily looked at the framed picture she had drawn weeks earlier. Across the top were the words, "One kind person can change a whole town." Arthur gently added one more line beneath it. And sometimes that kind person is only 10 years old. Their story proved that true wealth is not measured by money, but by the kindness we leave in the hearts of others.